Press freedom is a pillar of democracy but has been declined in several EU countries. To address this, the bloc has introduced the Media Freedom Act, which applies to the countries since August. Some governments are resisting the first ever EU regulation related to the press. EU Decoded looks into it.
The new rules aim to protect the editorial independence of journalists as well as their sources, including against the use of spyware. There are also provisions to ensure the independence of public service media from state interference and to enhance transparency of media ownership. The regulation includes guidelines to protect against the unjustified removal of online content produced by media outlets. This applies to major platforms such as Google, YouTube, and social media apps.
The European Parliament broadly supported the law approved last year, and some governments have begun adopting their national laws. But recently, members of that parliament warned that some countries are resisting its implementation. Let's hear what Europeans think about greater press protection.
Hát a legfontosabb, ami létezik, mert szólásszabadság nélkül nem létezik semmi, de minden őszinte kéne legyen, nem hazugság, nem átverés. Szerintem a legfontosabb, anélkül nincsen demokrácia és nincsen semmi.
Hát ha már politikai nyomásról kell védeni, az már nem demokrácia, egyrészt. És szerintem az újságírók, ha ügyesek, akkor nem kell őket védeni.
Ta rola jest zastępowana przez social media, które nie zawsze mają swój poziom rzetelności w tej funkcji.
Absolutnie uważam, że są pod presją polityczną i absolutnie uważam, że praca dziennikarza w tych czasach jest niestety w jakiś sposób niebezpieczna.
Euronews reporter Sandor Giros will help us better understand this legislation. Signs of declining media freedom was the argument used in 2021 by the European Commission for the need of an European law on this matter. Can you give us some examples, particularly affecting investigative journalism?
At the end of the last decade, 2 investigative journalists have been killed, Jan Kuciak in Slovakia and Daphne Caruana Galizia in Malta, and this was a wake-up call for the European Union that the media freedom was in danger. But this was only the tip of the iceberg, because the Commission saw that media freedom is declining in almost all of the member states because of political pressure, because of business interests, and because of spyware being used against journalists.
Let's talk about those cases of spyware against journalists. What happened and how can this law address those issues?
Well, the most serious breaches have been recorded in Poland and in Hungary, where opposition figures, investigative journalists have been targeted by spyware. They hacked their phones. And this was clearly for political reasons. There have been cases also in Greece and in Spain, but those cases have not been a systemic risk against the opposition and against journalists. Now the new law says that spyware can be only used against journalists when there is a threat for the national security. Otherwise, this is forbidden.
In a recent debate in the European Parliament about this law, 3 hard-right political groups said, and I quote, "This is a censorship tool used by Brussels to silence divergent voices." Which countries are more likely to resist the implementation of the law?
Well, we surely see a problem in Hungary, where we have a very hard-right government who is heavily influencing media and distorting the media market. What might change is also depends on, how each and every member state applies this law and how the European Commission will put pressure on the member states to really take this law seriously.
The 2025 Rule of Law report from the European Commission warns of deteriorating conditions for journalists in several countries, smear campaigns by politicians, and growing risks from highly concentrated media ownership. Going into details, the Commission highlights concerns about journalists' safety in Bulgaria and Malta. The report points out that political pressure, including the distribution of state advertising, is a serious concern in Hungary and Romania. Media ownership lacks transparency, chiefly in Bulgaria, Czechia, Netherlands, Cyprus and Spain. The report cites issues with independent regulation in Hungary, Greece and Poland.
Our guest is Julie Marzazek, head of Brussels office of Reporters Without Borders. Should the European Commission open infringement proceedings that could even lead to sanctions against member states that resist implementing this new law?
Member states have had more than a year to update their national laws, but most of them haven't yet done it. So yes, I think it is time for the Commission to show its determination and, if necessary, to initiate proceeding against the most recalcitrant government. It's a test of credibility.
Social media and the use of generative artificial intelligence, including in posts by political and business actors themselves, are increasingly defining the way people get news. So, isn't this law weak in addressing the problem of misinformation through those channels?
There is one article in the MFA which supplements the Digital Services Act, but this doesn't solve the main problem, which is how social networks and their algorithm work by promoting polarizing, divisive, shocking content, amplifying disinformation, and marginalizing reliable media content.
Concentration of media ownership in a few big corporations is increasing. What are the main risks of that, and does this law address those risks?
The EMFA introduces a new way to look at mergers. The assessment of mergers will have to take into account a number of criteria, such as the expected effect on pluralism and the party's interest in other media sectors, the economic viability, and the party's commitments to editorial independence.
The European Federation of Journalists stated that influencers and bloggers that follow the ethical rules of journalism should be considered media service providers. Others argue that this could lead to abuse of a law designed for controlled and recognized media outlets. The future seems somehow misty for the media sector and the law intended to protect it.